Have you ever noticed how when we learn something on the spot, say a phone number, we remember it for a short while only to forget it the very next day? What about when we are learning a new language? We manage to remember for longer words, expressions, grammar rules when we keep going back to them and using them again and again. Or when we work all day on something but we're not able to finish it, we continue thinking about it. For example, when the manager asks us about the tasks that we have finished, we've already forgotten about them, but we can tell every single detail about the tasks that we are still working on. What is at play in all these instances is the Zeigarnik Effect, which is the tendency to remember better tasks that have been interrupted before they could be completed than tasks that have not been interrupted, which means interruptions be welcome. The Zeigarnik Effect was named after the Russian psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, and she calls this tendency an unsatisfied quasi-need to finish an activity. The Zeigarnik Effect is what makes our mind keep thinking about unfinished work even when we're doing something else. It is what makes us play a video game until we've won. It is why when we study for an exam the night before, we remember everything at the exam, but we then forget it all right after the exam. The Zeigarnik Effect is in some way what gives us closure. We want to complete something that we have started, even if just for the sake of finishing and being done with it. Different individuals have a different need for closure, but most of us, we need to attain closure as quickly as possible and also maintain it for as long as possible. Not obtaining closure means uncertainty and ambiguity, and for an indefinite amount of time. The Zeigarnik Effect is used a lot in psychology, but not only. Television series use the effect when they finish one episode on a cliffhanger, making us wait impatiently for the next episode. Subscription-based softwares also use the Zeigarnik Effect when they display, for example, how much in percentage we have completed setting up of our profile. They make us want to go back and finish the process. There has been some controversy about the Zeigarnik Effect. A few researchers have conducted their own studies proving the validity of the effect. Some others have not come to the same conclusion. Some studies have found that there are some other factors that can influence the strength of the effect, as Bluma Zeigarnik herself had laid out in her paper. These factors include the time of interruption. In the study, people who were interrupted in the middle or towards the end of the task had a better recall of the interrupted task than completed tasks, compared to the people who were interrupted soon after they had started the task. Our level of motivation and attitude. Ambitious people who have a desire to finish what they start have a better recall of interrupted tasks. Those who complete a task just because they should, it's part of their job or is something that the manager asked them to do, experience the effect only as a quasi-need. And how difficult we believe the task to be. When we feel like a task is beyond our abilities, regardless of whether or not we finish it, we tend to remember little to nothing about it. The Zeigarnik Effect has everything to do with our recall ability, but it can have an immense impact on our work every single day. So if we were to believe that this effect is indeed true, that it is unfinished tasks and not finished ones that we remember better, then how can we make use of it in a way that helps us? Here are 6 ways the Zeigarnik Effect can help us. 1. Overcoming procrastination. There are many factors at play when it comes to procrastination, and there are probably at least that many things to do to overcome it. One of them, of which you have most probably heard, is the 10-minute rule. I'll try it for 10 minutes. This is the trick to get started. In fact, what is behind the 10-minute rule is the Zeigarnik Effect. Once we've begun a task and then we stop, our thoughts will keep going back to it. Even if after we've stopped working on our task, we start working on something else, ideas on the first task might come to mind from time to time. The more we work on the task before we finished it, the more we are going to want to continue working on it so that we can finish it. 2. Finding motivation. We don't have the same level of motivation for all of our tasks. On some we might enjoy working, and for others, generally the most tedious or difficult ones, we have very little motivation, which is why we tend to postpone working on them. Completing a task, on the other hand, gives us 2 things. A sense of accomplishment. The harder the task is, the greater the sense of accomplishment that we feel is. And closure, especially for tasks that are stressful. We can't wait to be done with them. In both cases, for difficult and stressful tasks, the tricky part is using the sense of accomplishment and the closure that we get the moment we finish these tasks to motivate us to work on them all the way to their completion. 3. Do not complete a task in one sitting. When we want to memorize something, any kind of information, trying to do so in one sitting decreases our chance to remember it for a long time. Instead, what we should do is we should first familiarize ourselves with the information. Then we should stop working or thinking about this particular information and switch to something else entirely. After a short while, we can go back to the same information. Sometimes we might need to do this a few times before we memorize it. 4. Complete a big chunk of the task before an interruption. Bloom's Zeigarnik study showed that the desire to complete a task may start as a quasi-need, but once we've been engrossed by the task, and this happens after we have completed a big part of it, a genuine need arises, and we are drawn to the task and to its completion. Many of us have already noticed how when someone interrupts us right after we have started working on a task, it becomes so difficult to go back to it, because we are not invested in it yet. But when we're interrupted after we've been working on it for a while, it's okay. It sometimes is even welcome, because then we have had the chance to step back and maybe reflect on it and come up with a new idea. 5. Do not make the interruptions too long. When we are learning to play a musical instrument, we might one day work very hard on it for the entire day. But then when we pick it up in a week, it could happen that we don't remember anything from what we learned on that day. This has a higher chance of happening if we're in the beginning stage. This shows again the Zeigarnik effect at play, but now paying attention to the duration of the interruption. Our brain is indeed intruded by thoughts about the interrupted task, but the longer the interruption, the more these intruding thoughts will subside. We don't want that, as that might lead to us never finishing the task. And last but not least, 6. Ideas and solutions come to life. Having intruding thoughts about a task that we have started but have not yet finished, while we're working on something else or doing something else, or when we're not doing anything for that matter, means we can come up with an idea that we didn't think of when we were working on the task. We might come to a solution to our problem because our brain is invested in finding the solution to a problem that we are having. How many times has that happened at school and at work as well? It could happen that we go to bed at night, and as we're falling asleep, our brain, which has been working on a problem, all of a sudden comes up with the solution. We find ourselves awake and with a solution to our problem in our hands. Knowing what is at play at any particular instance in our work and in our life can help us not only understand the phenomenon that is happening and why, but also to use it to our advantage. By putting these 6 elements of the Zeigarnik effect into practice, we can make sure that we make the best of it. I will see you guys in the next video.